Welcome to the Point of No Return podcast, a show at the intersection of technology and strategy. On this show, we interview industry leaders and experts to better understand how they think about strategy during this time of exponential progress.
Bonjour tout le monde. My guest this week is Marie-Josée Gagnon, CEO at Casacom. Marie-Josée founded Casacom as a strategic communication firm back in 2001. And we had a really great conversation today where we spoke about her career, how she started actually in the world of politics, how she moved from being in journalism to being the press attaché of the Quebec Premier back in the 90s. We also spoke about her journey about meeting world leaders and really being in, I want to say intimidating situations, but not being intimidated, and how that helped her basically launch her own firm. We spoke about a lot about the early days of how she launched Casacom really as a solopreneur, and then built it up today to being really in multiple cities across Canada. We also spoke about something I found interesting, is this concept of a personal purpose, which I really loved, and you'll hear about it. And we also spoke about this side project called Brave, which is an interview series showcasing bold experiences of female leaders, of women who dared to be brave. And it was really great learning for me, learning about this project. Marie-Josée's story is quite remarkable, and she's had really an impressive career. Her outlook on life and on business for me is really refreshing, and I think that you'll have many takeaways from today's episode. Thank you. Marie-Josée, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I find you have a very interesting and a very eclectic background that I want to dive into, and obviously a field that I know a little bit. But before we talk about your work and what you do, I'd like to kind of rewind the clock and talk about your earlier days of your career. So I'm just curious, what got you interested in politics?
It was not planned at all. Well, what was planned is that I studied in political science because I wanted to become a journalist. That was in 1990. If you remember, 1990 was the beginning of a really important recession. And the first companies that are media. So in 1990, I was doing an internship at La Presse, which was an incredible experience. Out of the school, got that internship, and they were unfortunately not hiring. And I was writing my master in political science, and I had to pay my rent. So I was walking on the street on I don't remember, probably a Monday evening around 4:45, late afternoon. Met a woman who was carrying a big furniture in her arms, and she wasn't young, and I helped her. And I don't want to tell the whole story, but starting from there with, what we call the concours de circonstances, a series of events, I got an offer to become the press attaché of Jacques Parizeau in 1990. I absolutely wanted to be a journalist. But that was extremely tough. And I had a lot of admiration for that man. And I had no job. And I had a rent to pay. And I said yes. But at the beginning, it was huge. It was a huge change for me, a change of perspective, change of career. Because when you do that, when you go on that side, which is the other side of journalism, it's very hard to come back. And I knew that. But what an opportunity. I was 22 years old, and I became his press attaché at the most incredible time of Quebec history. So from 1990 to 1996. And I had the immense privilege of being with him, every day for 6 years. And, so I got so much out of that. It's the perfect job for somebody of that age.
That's a great story. I'd love to kind of like connect the dots, how you being a good Samaritan led you to that opportunity of working with the Premier of Quebec. But I guess we could maybe skip it for another time. But I'd love to understand how that happens, helping someone to getting the opportunity to work with the Prime Minister of Quebec. What do you think you learned during those times? Obviously, you're working in the annals of power of Quebec at that time, right? And hugely important period of history, as you mentioned. So curious as to the lessons you took away.
Well, one of the lessons I took away is whenever you're given power, it's not given, it's lent. It is not for you to use, necessarily for your own personal, good. It's something that is given to you and you're at the service of the people of Quebec. That was something very important to me. The other thing is, people that go in politics, I would say most of the people that do that, they are incredibly motivated by doing good and they're incredibly investing themselves in that. That's quite amazing. What it brought me personally is this 360 point of view on everything. And also, you will not impress me easily. When you're, and that's useful, so I'm not impressed easily by or intimidated by somebody or by a situation. I've seen so much at such a young age that now, life is I'm not impressed easily. It doesn't mean that I don't admire people. It doesn't mean that I don't get nervous. It just means that meeting a president of a big country doesn't intimidate me. And that's useful. And that's useful in the business world. That's useful. But that's the 360 thing, I think, is the most useful today. When it comes down to crisis management, for instance, I connect all the dots and it's something that is integrated in me and it's quite useful. And it's something difficult to learn in the books. It's almost impossible. It's not something that I can, be taught. It's really something that you learn on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you can have like a more of a stoic outlook and, when you're in, let's say, high pressure situations where you can remain more calm, right?
Exactly.
Because
I've seen so many crises, one after the other.
Yeah. Particularly one year I can think of when you were press attaché.
I had folders, this crisis, that crisis, that other crisis, other crisis,
Well, you mentioned, wanting to be a journalist and like not going, that dividing threshold, right? Like Mario Dumont, I think is famously famous for doing it. Have you ever considered either going back into politics or into journalism?
I thought of going back to, journalism because right after my years in politics, I got an appointment in Paris as the chief of staff of the delegate general there. And I stayed there for almost 2 years, but I had to tell you that I got bored because at the time it became the last priority of the government. So I left the first priority of the government, which was, the prime minister office, to go to probably the least important thing, which at the time was the case because a lot of expense reduction happened in the network of delegations in Quebec. So I was there and I was a little bit bored. So I was starting thinking, and I had an agenda. I had my own schedule, which I've never had in my life, my professional life before. The schedule was my boss's schedule. Now I was in Paris. I had a schedule. I had time. I had weekends. I had nights. And so I started thinking about journalism. And I said to myself, oh, no, this is impossible. I thought about it. I almost wrote to La Presse saying, guys, remember me? The reason why I didn't go is that it's not a job of action. It's a job of observation. That was not enough for me.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about entrepreneurship. My parents are teachers. My sister is teacher. My aunt is a teacher. Everybody's teachers or a little bit of lawyers. Nobody's an entrepreneur. my godmother is an entrepreneur. That's all. The rest, they're all teachers or lawyers. So but I started thinking about that. It came from within, and I was in Paris, and so that started, but it was way before I launched my business. It was, in fact, something like 4 years before.
So it took 4 years of, let's say, it kind of like percolating in your mind, and you were working at a company called Axor, is that correct?
Yes. Well, when I came back from Paris, I worked at Laurentian Bank of Canada for a year. I replaced somebody that was at maternity leave, and then I went to an engineering construction company.
And so imagine it was a slow burn up until you made the decision. Do you remember if something triggered it, or was it just let's say circumstances you said, okay, I'm going to do it now?
A few things. I really wanted to do it, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I had the courage to do it. I was used to having a pay every other week. And I didn't think that I could sell anything to anyone. Because when you work at the government, at the position I had, you are in demand. You say yes or no. You never ask for help. It's not, you command, kind of. It's an image, but you're not in a situation where you're asking. So I didn't think I could do it, but at the same time, I had the desire. So a few things happened. The very first thing that really, really triggered everything, I think, was the birth of my first son. I had a short maternity leave at the time. When I came back, I realized that it's not worth leaving every day the house for that kind of job. The job needed to be much more meaningful to me, to leave my kid. Of course, I was going to work. There was no question about that. But where was I going to work? And then there was an opportunity at the museum, the Fine Art Museum, for becoming director of communication. And that was an amazing job, a dream job. And I was a finalist, and I was in front of the board of director, all Montreal, very, very powerful group. And the chair asked me, Marie-Josée, if you don't have this job, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to launch my business. That was over, that was in March, and I launched in September. And so and then I think in May, I went to see somebody I knew at a PR firm, and I said, why don't you hire me for a year? And in a year, if you think we can work together, well, let's become partner. I didn't think I was able to do it. Then she said, yes, that's a wonderful idea. We're going to become big if you come with me. I said, yes. And then we had our, lawyers and accountants work with us on the deal. And at the end, at some point in the discussion, she called me and she said, Marie-Josée, I prefer not to pursue that. I said, no problem. I hung up and I called right away somebody I knew who had a space in our office in the World Trade Center of Montreal. And I said, can I rent it? And she said, yes. Because I really didn't it's not because somebody just told me, no, it's impossible. I said to myself, let's do a move right now. And then I started a few weeks after.
That's great. That's a great story.
But if you can see that I lacked courage, and it was a process, and I had to do it. I didn't really believe.
Yeah. Well, you did it.
I did it. I did it.
So
I know, but it's the struggle of the beginning. And I want to insist on that, because people who are feeling that right now and would like to become an entrepreneur, they have to know that it's part of the deal. What is part of the deal as well is the preparation. So you prepare to become an entrepreneur, but you also provoke yourself. So when I said to that board chair, well, if you don't hire me, I'm gonna start a business, that was provocation to me. Yeah. It was too late.
Yeah. It's like almost, I forget the exact expression, but you're putting yourself out there, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like a social pressure.
Yeah,
for
it's
instance,
like
right?
the dental paste.
It's
know,
like
it's
it's
over.
telling, like as a simple example, it's like, hey, I'm going to go on a diet and lose 20 pounds or whatever. But if you start telling people, it's like, oh crap, well, I need to do this.
You cannot eat French fries in front of them.
Exactly. So I'm curious because you obviously seemed very well prepared in terms of your background, what you've done, what you had studied for the company that you founded, which is called Casacom. How different or how much more challenging was it when you actually did launch? Because I assume you had a business plan, you had ideas. Was it completely different? Like, just curious to
Oh my God. That was, very small, very, very small. But when I launched, I was so concerned I would not have a pay that I developed clients before. And you know that I launched on September 11, 2001.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because I launched the day I came into that space. And I came back home right away, unfortunately. And I had a few clients in the US already that were, Montrealers that one was landing that morning in New York. That the business was called, Balit, not Balit, but it was Baltex, the swimwear company that they went bankrupt after that, 7 years after that. But it was my first client. So it was really, really basic at the beginning. One thing was sure is that I had not worked in a PR agency before. I had not worked, I had no experience in business. The only experience I had was communication, PR, and I had a huge network and a great reputation, I have to say. I had a very good reputation, and that's one of the reasons why I started my business. I said to myself, well, you should put that into, for you. So I did start, and what I did is I informed my network slowly but surely. And I remember that I launched in September, and in December we were 4. So that was a good start. It was not the most amazing start, but for me, that was a good start. And what was absolutely incredible to me was I was able to pay everybody, and I was able to make some money, and even more money than I did, a few months before that. So I was, wow, it's working. But it was really an organic thing. But I also thought that there was something missing in the industry. And that's why I call that Casacom. I didn't want the name to be too French or too English. That's a very Montreal issue. And Casa de Communication or Casacom meant, Maison de Communication, House of Communication, very homey, very everything under the same roof. We were 4, so we couldn't pretend that, but that was the idea. And if today it's reality, or, it's becoming a reality it's always growing in that sense. So I thought what was missing was some humanity so that's why I came with Maison Casa. I needed my business to be warm, welcoming, and also very, excellent at the same time. It was so humanity and excellence at the same time.
Yeah, from what I understand from Casacom's mission, it's to elevate customers, employees in the profession.
Yes.
So I'm curious as to how you take that mission and actually live it in the day-to-day. How does that occur?
Oh my God, it's really every day. So it's really about being ambitious, for our clients, and challenging them to challenge us. And together, we go further, and we go higher. We elevate. So it's really not accepting the status quo. It's really questioning, really, make them think that there's another solution, that there's another path, that they can go, beyond what they thought at the beginning. With employees, it's the continuous learning. And we have we have a program, and maybe you're tired of that word. It's a program that started 3 years ago. It's called Transformation in Action. It's really the idea of, it's every day, every minute. It's not something that we're doing for May or June. It's really something that we're doing every day. And it's really about experimentation, and transformation and learning as we go, always. And every time we have a project that we have never done, or a mandate that it's, something we've never ever done. It's like, it's so exciting. And, so we're following. So that's the idea. And for the industry, well, the industry is so in the middle of a change. It's changing so much, and everybody's doing what everybody's doing at the same time. So there's no frontier anymore. My goal is to make sure that CEOs and leaders in organization understand that the strategic role of PR, the strategic role of communication.
Yeah. I love the founding story. So to go back to where you started in the early days to where you are today, I'd love to unpack and understand the scope of what you're offering, because it's like, from what I understand, it seems that you cover quite a wider range in the communications and the public relations sphere. So I'd love to understand the main value and how you bring that value to customers.
Well, it's there's what we call the total integration. Total integration is not only the PESO model. I don't know if you know about the PESO model. It's the paid, earn, shared and own channels, which are, advertising, media relations, social media, and, proprietary, tools like websites and things like that. That's one aspect. For me, it's the basic integration aspect of it. What I found interesting is the total integration, which means that when a client comes to us, we can launch a product for them. So a very positive PR or communication activity. But at the same time or ahead of time, we will manage issues. We will also be ready for any crisis, and we will also talk to all their shareholders, stakeholders.
Yes.
So that's really this idea of a 360. And what we love is complex projects. So if we're only launching a product, it's less interesting. So we want to have complex, projects. And this is what we're looking for each time.
Yeah, it seems very relevant to what companies today are in need of, right? And I think we're talking about it a little bit before we started recording, right? The way I see it is this kind of like the notion of a barbell, where on the one side you have like the super analytics driven marketing efforts, and the other side is the high touch, experiential, higher value the customers are looking for, which I find you guys fall squarely in, right? So things like, I imagine you do things like crisis communication, cultural change. So those are aspects I imagine fall under your purview.
Exactly. And always with this digital environment in mind.
And give us a sense of a scale. I believe you're 30 employees, customers all over North America, just to understand.
Yes. Well, we have customers in Europe as well, in the United States. A lot of clients, because we have an office in Toronto as well, a lot of clients will hire us for their Canadian PR and communication. So we have a lot of foreign companies. We have our clients are so when we have a client, usually we serve that client, 360 or, 240, let's say, we deliver a lot of services to that client. So let's say for Toyota, for instance, we don't only work on launching cars for them. We also help them in their CSR activities, but also in when they need to make progress on, transformative technology like hydrogen in Quebec, and make sure that they're making progress with all the stakeholders, the governments, the communities, the potential buyers of that product. So it's really large, broad. And so that's the philosophy of Casacom. And when I think about the beginning, this was inside our head, but what really grew since 18 years is the digital part, starting in 2005, 2006, of course, but it really grew. All the creative as well. We opened a studio at Casacom. Before that, we were hiring design graphics and graphic designers or videographers. But today we're doing that internally. And altogether, it's creating such an incredible programs, for clients.
It sounds like you're going even back to your political roots and doing lobbying.
Yeah.
Not exactly lobbying, but helping companies navigate
Absolutely.
those waters.
We have government relations
and
services.
What are your immediate priorities? What are you trying to do with Casacom, let's say, moving forward in the next 24 or 36 months?
I would say pretty much what other companies like ours, I would say is growth, but not growth for nothing, growth to live that transformation in action in even more meaningful way, with larger program, with different clients, with our current clients growing. This is what we like to do. It's, being an independent firm as well means there's no money that is sent to London or to New York, and everything is concentrated in the communication program. So what can we do more in terms of program? How can we improve? For instance, we're opening a recording studio at Casacom. So that's the kind of things that, our recent growth allows us to do that. That's exciting. Okay, what's next? So
what's great about being independent is you're able to reinvest your profits into growing
and choose your path.
I imagine you've been approached, right? I'm sure companies have kicked the tires, and I'm just curious to pick your thoughts of what's your approach there, you're thinking.
Well, that's not my plan A. That's my plan B. I've been approached many times. I would prefer being sold to my employees, or, in part by some employees, and maybe eventually by an external buyer if it's an amazing company. Otherwise, I prefer, plan A, which is really my employees.
Yeah.
And I'm starting working on that right now.
What's the expression for the repreneuriat?
Yes.
Right? So it's like where employees take over. I like that approach as well. A few interesting companies, particularly marketing in Montreal, are looking at that. And I find it's not often explored. People always try and get the home run for a big holdco or something, but sometimes I think it's better for the company's longevity that employees look into.
And for the pleasure of working in the business as a leader as well. Because you do that ahead of time. You do that 5 to 10 years in advance. Of course, you're not, it's not the same kind of money. It's lower, but at the same time, it's what about the pleasure? What about the meaning as well?
Yeah. You live once, right? So it's like you're not taking money to your grave.
The stress as well.
Yeah.
It's tough to be an employee again. I mean, I don't know what it is to be an employee after 18 years.
I've seen it. I've had people that have been acquired, and then, they become, after the year out, they're employees, and, they're to quote BB King, the thrill is gone,
Yeah.
So it's not the same thing sometimes. Obviously, sometimes it does work out, so I don't want to do a blanket statement on it. And also, Marie-Josée, I've seen you've been outside of Casacom. You're a very active leader. You're involved in multiple organizations. You sit on the boards. And there's one project in particular that I find quite interesting and I love to talk about is Brave.
Yeah.
So I love to hear, what is Brave? How did you come up with the idea for it?
Well, Brave comes out of my personal purpose, which is making sure that, not making sure, but I would say question people. Are they living the life they're supposed to live? This is something that is, because of my journey that I told you, I almost missed that opportunity of becoming an entrepreneur. And becoming an entrepreneur meant to me expressing myself. And it's crucial. It's being free and being able to express myself, being able to attract the people I want to work with, do the things that I want to do. I mean, it's what an amazing opportunity to become an entrepreneur. And I almost missed that opportunity at some point. And at some point I had the courage to do it. And this is my story in a way that I'm trying to tell with Brave. And so whenever I have somebody in front of me and I have a discussion, and somebody that is usually dissatisfied with his or her life, I ask questions, and I realize that I've been doing that forever. And what I want to make sure is that person lives the life that he or she's supposed to live. So knowing that this is something very important to me, I decided to launch Brave, which is a series of interviews with women who dare to be brave in their life and have a story to share and a story to tell. And that, given the fact that they were very courageous, now they're at a point in their life that they can, share, and they can live fulfilly and, happily, and that they have something to share with others. So that's how it started. And it was really a personal project. And I told my team what I was going to do. And I started that October 24, 2017. That was the first interview I did with Karine Martin. I said, I'm going to do it at the office. Is there anyone who wants to help me? And then everybody wanted to help me. And a few person in particular were really, really my helpers on that. And they're still today. And I didn't know it was going to work. But I think because it started with exactly, my purpose, exactly what is really important to me, it had a lot of meaning. And it became very successful. And and I did that, I have to tell you, I did that because I was going to be 50 years old. And I absolutely wanted to do something special for that. I wanted to prove myself that I could do something new. And that in my mind, it was a pilot project. And then it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years. And we're on a roll. I mean, I don't know where it's going, but it's very exciting and it opens all kinds of doors. And I didn't know that it would have a positive impact on me, a positive impact on Casacom, but it does. And why not?
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like an initiative that, like you said, is very driven by meaning, which I think makes it also successful, right? Because it starts from a place that's true. And what is this, maybe a logistical question, what's the status of the project today? Are you still interviewing female leaders? And what's the plan for it?
I have interviewed 16 women so far, 15 in French, 1 in English. And I have 4 to go before the end of June. The reason why I chose women, it's not because I don't think men's stories are not interesting. It's because I think that women, there's still a gap. So the reason why I'm interviewing women only for now, it's because I think that there's still a gap in, the place of women in entrepreneurship or in big corporation, and that they need to hear courageous story. And it's going to inspire more and more women to become more and more courageous and reduce that gap. So that's the reason why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, people like people, right? So I think people like examples of leaders. And I think that's what the more than statistics of 8 out of 10 leaders are male.
Exactly.
Or I think that's not compelling enough.
Stories. And what we tell is real stories. So I go back and I ask tough questions. And what I want to do absolutely is to have that person share a difficult moment as well. Because a lot of the people I've interviewed are, very successful, like the mayor of Montreal, Christiane Germain, Daniel Henkel, Mylène Paquette, who crossed the ocean in a boat on her own. Christiane Germain, all kinds of, Kim Tsui, the author. They're all very, very successful. But what we forget sometimes is that they went through a lot of struggle. Yeah. So I go back there so that people can relate to those stories.
Yeah. What would have been maybe to flip it on you? What do you think has been your biggest struggle, particularly when it comes to, let's say, Casacom, or even personal, if you want to share?
My biggest struggle. Even if I was very confident as a teen and child, I had everything to become very, very confident. I think that's that doubt in your mind. Am I worth it? Am I capable? Am I going to be capable? That doubt, that little voice, it's really coming over that voice. It's a continuous challenge even today.
Yeah, am I good enough? And
am I good enough?
Yeah, do I need to fake it until I make it? And
I'm not saying that I'm saying that to myself every day, no, or all the time. I would say I'm pretty confident, but once in a while, in crucial times, I know I go back there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I can relate. Sometimes it's a dark place and it's hard to get away from that feeling, especially when you're trying to do something that's maybe different or that people are telling you you're not going to succeed. So yeah, I could definitely relate. And I feel, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I feel, speaking to my female friends, they see that for themselves sometimes as well. Why am I good enough? There's all this a field that's dominated by men. But like you said, there are examples out there, plenty of successful women out there. So I think shedding the light and putting the stories out front is something I applaud you for. Mm-hmm. Maybe talk a little bit about the industry, which can cover leadership or PR. I'd like to see what you think are things you're most excited about in the next few years, things that you're keeping an eye on.
Well, the big thing is the fact that I started working in the old world and now I'm working in the new world. And that's very exciting. You know, when I started working in 1990, it was a macho world, you know. Women were, you know, even women were saying, oh, I'm so, you know, they were so excited to say that they were the only woman on that team of leaders or on that board, or this is really not something you want to say today. But I still hear it once in a while. So there's some little reminiscence, or, you know, you can tell that there's a few, how do you say that? There's little things that are still there from the old world, but we're in a new world and it's exciting. So I'm very excited to see women, for instance, becoming president of huge organization, or young men, or feminist women, or people that are driven by social values and, you know, environment values, and people that wants to change the world and think that business and change the world can go hand in hand. So that's what I'm excited about right now. And so, but it's funny to think, and I don't know if it's your case, but 1990 was another world now. Even the way you manage an office, you know that, the way you manage an office, it's completely different today. And it's much better today. It's much more transparent. You involve everybody. The fact that, I always say, you know, I don't have a boss in New York or in London, but I have my employees, you know, and I have my clients, of course, but my employees, my God, they remind me every day, of what is important. So that gets me excited a lot. So it's really about taking part of this change that is happening everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's a very good note to leave it on, and one that I find is very very hopeful. Mm-hmm. One last question for you, Marie-Josée, is maybe where can people find out more information about yourself or what you're working on?
Well, Casacom is at casacom.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn, of course. And Brave, you have to write braveinspiration.com, I think. Yeah, braveinspiration.com. So you can listen to our podcast on, you know, all those podcast app. And you can watch also the videos we're creating at Casacom on our YouTube channel.
Great. You great use of social media.
Oh, yes. We're all over the place.
Great. Well, Marie-Josée, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you, Nectar.
Thank you for listening to the Point of No Return podcast. Never miss an episode by clicking on the subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play.